Thank you both so much for being here and for the film. Seeing it on the big screen is just extraordinary. It's the sort of immersive, expressive qualities of it, I think, just soar in a space like this. So we're really, really excited to have you here with the film. Just to dive right in, I've been reading up on the film and interviews you've done, and you've spoken a great deal about how your impetus to tell this story had to do with your interest in experimenting with a nonlinear narrative that was enabled by the fact that the protagonist is an animal, and so dialogue is really secondary to the development of the story and the character. Could you just speak a bit about that, about this question of nonlinearity and your approach to abstraction within the narrative that you crafted?
I should double the translator. Should I translate and dlaczego ten film, dlaczego nonlinearna struktura i trochę o tym, dlaczego zwierzę?
This is Eva, my co-writer, my co-producer, and most of it my wife. And then she also serves occasionally as a translator of my English into the English. So, as I understood, you are asking a general question: why? Why donkey? Why? And how does this happen? There are quite many reasons, and I was told, speak shortly. Don't bother, don't make people boring.
Don't bother people. Yeah.
Don't bother people. So of course there are some elements which came together when we decide to go to make this film. First of all, this is our fourth film which we made together. It started several years ago with 4 Nights with Anna. Then we made Essential Killing.
I thought you promised to be short, Jerzy.
Then 7 years ago we made 11 Minutes, and then we start to think what could be the next one. And we both discovered that we are fed up with the traditional linear narration of the films, which, tells the story from A to Z, introducing the characters in the first act, trying to get them into some kind of conflict, resolving that little conflict, making sure that we have those plot points. I remember there must be some plot point on the 18th minute, and then, you go into the second act, which also has to be shaped somehow, and then in the third act, on the 57th minute, there has to be another plot point leading to the final, whatever. Boring, boring, boring. Too many films done the same way, too many similar characters. I think we've seen them all. So, being still ambitious as I was from my early age until even now, we thought that maybe we can somehow break that traditional narration. And we tried to do it in 11th minute, and it didn't fully work what we were attempting. So we already had a reservation that maybe our palette, maybe our tale of cards,
Stack of cards, I think, no?
Staff of cards? No.
Stack of cards.
Pack of cards. Maybe it's not large enough. Maybe we should bring some new element into it, which would, you know, suddenly some ace, which would really be trump card. So we thought perhaps an animal character, especially that I had those recollection, and this is the second element which I would introduce now. And we have to go back to the year of 1966, when I was a very young filmmaker, not being even 30 years old, just out of school, and I made my first professional feature film called Walkover. And this film was a modest production done for nothing. I had to play the lead because I couldn't afford the actor. So, and it was shown in a few cinemas in Warsaw and one cinema in Paris. For some reason, you know, some crazy French guy decided to take this, the print from Poland and show it in Paris. And then suddenly, at the end of the year, I received a phone call from Paris, from the editors of Cahiers de Cinéma, which was already established as the major film magazine of the world, really. You know, every filmmaker was looking at Cahiers de Cinéma, and whatever they say was like, you know, the voice of God. By the way, it was run by Jean-Luc Godard, so no wonder. Anyway, they called me and they wanted the interview with me. So I said, are you crazy? I just made one film and nobody knows about me, nobody knows this film, so why are you going to interview me? They said, the reason is that we just, as an editorial ensemble, we made the list of 10 best films of the year, and yet your Walkover took the second place. So I kept silent for solid 10 seconds, maybe even longer, trying to get to somehow swallow this information. And then I said, and who took the first place? And the answer was Robert Bresson with Au hasard Balthazar. And I haven't seen that film at that moment. So I said, can we postpone the interview for another day or two, so meantime I would have a chance to see the number one. And that's what happened. I went, I purchased the ticket, I went to the cinema, and I started to watch Bresson's film with my usual attitude of that time, being a very young filmmaker, still learning, desperately learning what to do, you know, to make the film interesting. So I was watching it with a kind of semi-cynical and semi-professional look, how the things are being done, not letting the effect of the film disrupt my process of learning. And I don't know when, at what moment of the film I lost that semi-professional, semi-cynical look, but I lost it finding myself at the very end of the film with a memorable scene when Balthazar, the donkey, is dying on a field and is being surrounded by the herd of sheep, you know, with those little belts around their necks, dingling slightly. It's a breathtaking scene, and I find myself crying. And that was honestly the only time before or after that I had tears in my eyes while watching the film. And I understood that Robert Bresson reduced me from that, let's call it cynical look, into the normal viewer, the one who purchased the ticket to get some kind of emotional kick, and he really kicked me hardly. Hard. He kicked me hard. And I got the big lesson from him that when you watch something which you can believe that this is true, and I really watched the animal dying, believing that this lovely character is dying, that this is the end of it. And this is why I cried. And the lesson is that if you watch something which would really be full of the truth, and the truth about animals is that they don't know what the act is. They don't act. They are just being there. So I fully believe that I have seen the favorite character of the whole film dying. And that was stronger than any brilliant performance of the greatest actor in the world, who would be performing, acting something, but somewhere in the back of the audience mind, at least in the back of my mind, would be the suspicion that, okay, it's brilliantly done, it's fantastic professional act, but it's not the truth. After the director would say cut, the actor would jump from his seat, go for a drink or make jokes or whatever he could do. They do many different things. And that's it, and that wouldn't be the truth. So that was the second element, that I remember that the animal can move me stronger than any great actor who would deliver his best performance. So having those two elements, obsession about break from the traditional narration and looking for the new element which would help us in that process, we thought that, okay, casting an animal as perhaps the lead, the main character of the film, at least it would give us, first of all, it would reduce the dialogue, which is always the weakest thing in the films, you know. It's not always very well written, and it's not always very well acted. So that weak element of the film will be at least cut. And then, because of the lack of the dialogue of the main character, it could be exchanged for what I cleverly plan, my work with Paweł Mikietin, who is phenomenal Polish classical music composer. His symphonies are really being played all around the world in the best philharmonics, with whom I already work, and I knew that Paweł wouldn't treat his work for the film as a step down from his Olymp of classical music, that he would do the music for my film with the same amount of ambition and the same amount of talent, that he would help me to create something like an inner monologue of the donkey, that he would help me to make this bridge between my main character and the audience by suggestions what's going on in Donkey's head. And I think it worked basically because of the talent of Paweł Mykietin. So as I'm saying it between the lines, that this film is a bit different from the rest of my films, where unfortunately I had this weakness of pushing myself in front of everybody else, that it is my film, that I was really like putting myself in front of the film. With this film, for the first time, I properly used the talents of my collaborators, starting with Eva, who had written most of the script, then with Mykietin, who did the music, which without his music, the film would be much less effective, obviously. And the cinematographer, Dymek, who did a really fantastic job, whom I pushed to do the crazy things. Whenever Dymek came to me and said, hey, maybe we should do the kind of unusual shot of what I said, no, go even further, not the unusual, a very extremely unusual shot. So I was pushing him as much as I could, and remember the DOPs they hate to take risks, because when they take risks, they can be out of focus, or maybe, something wrong technically. And if the idiot director would use one of those shots, the whole blame would go on the DOP, not on the idiot. So I had those guys who really helped me. And then the editor, fantastic editor, whose name is Agnieszka Glińska, with whom we made 11 minutes, and she already proved that she's got this ability of going with emotions. And this film, it's made out of the emotions, because the film is our song of love for animals and for nature. We both love animals and we both love nature, and we both are afraid that what's going on with the world those days, that we are destroying the nature so brutally for such a long time, and we are destroying the animals, the living creatures, so senselessly, and eating too many of them. By the way, we cut our meat consumption drastically, by 2/3, I guess. And half of my crew stopped eating meat completely. I regret that we are not vegetarians yet. Maybe one day it will happen. But I still have a feeling of guilt whenever I have the piece of ham or whatever it is. So more or less this is how it all happened.
I have to say, you've answered many of my questions. We're short on time, but I want to ask one more question to both of you about the matter of tone, the tone of the film, and especially on the level of writing and your collaboration in crafting this narrative. Could you talk about how you balanced the sort of sweetness and tenderness of the character and his sort of subjectivity with the brutality, the callous sort of human world in which he finds himself, and as well as humor? There's a great deal of humor in the film. Could you just talk a bit about your thinking in terms of the tone and feel of the story?
Actually, about the tone of the finished film, I think it has much more to do with all those elements that Jerzy was talking about right now. But obviously, sort of the starting point was the in the script that we were writing, and I think it was inherent in the subject matter and in our main hero, because of course before we started the whole process, we also looked at all the literature, at I don't know, Ovidius' Metamorphosis and Apuleius's Golden Ass, and all those. I mean, we've had those images of, I don't know, the donkey under Jesus coming into Jerusalem. I mean, all those associations that you have usually with the character of a donkey have a somewhat sort of allegorical, a bit fairy tale-ish kind of tinge to them. So this was, of course, always there, and we knew it has to be a road movie, much like all those books I was just telling about. But I think the exact tone that you refer to is the the mixture of all those elements that Jerzy just mentioned, including music and the sound and the editing and photography, and all of them. And all of those collaborators have always knew that the prime sort of the prime tool and the prime goal that we have in front of ourselves is speaking to the audience through emotions.
And talking about my collaborators, because I only mentioned 3 of them, and there were many more who really had a creative impact of the film. Let me give you an example. We had the art director who was great, but one day when we were looking for the locations for that sequence of the forest walk, he went his way, we went some other way, we were all looking for the best place to shoot it, we were taking the pictures, etc. And in the evening, we all returned into the base, and his name was Koncewicz. Mietek Koncewicz. He said, look, yeah, my pictures are basically very similar to your pictures, but I have one very specific. And he showed me the picture where there are matzevas, the Jewish tombs, deep in the forest, really inaccessible, completely inaccessible. But we decided to go next morning to that very place, and we like it, of course, because they look great, and it was truth, that in that remote forest, which was then completely wild, it had to be the cemetery 50 or 100 years ago in that very place. So we somehow felt that it would be good to accept the reality, the fact that we came across such a place, we should have it on the film. And then I look at Dimek, the DOP who was looking around, the forest was huge and dense, a lot of trees and ups and downs, no way to to go there with the camera, you know. But he said, yeah. He said, if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if I have 6 light towers there, and he showed more or less where he would imagine to have the light towers. Can you imagine what it was to build 6 light towers in the dense forest where we couldn't even walk into the place? We did that because of our ambition to use the best what the reality could offer us for this film. So some people even don't notice those matsevas, but I am sure that some do, and I think it was worth it.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have right now, but I hope that you will all join us to raise a glass to Jerzy and Eva in the reception just across the way. And thank you so much again, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you everybody. Thank you.